Brr, brr. We just did a take of this where I tried to sing the TNG theme and I did Star Wars, and now I just did it again. Okay. Welcome to ReTrekking Podcast with Dylan and Tyler, Episode 7 of Next Generation, Lonely Among Us. We're going to begin with a plot summary. You ready, Dylan?
Oh, I'm ready. I assume it sounded like you had the plot summary.
Yeah, I typed it out. We're just going to start with the plot summary, and then we'll talk about stuff all around the episode. So we'll start with the story first. The Enterprise oversees negotiations between alien delegates from pointless races called the Antikins and the Soleil. While transporting the pointless delegates to their pointless destination, the crew finds an odd cloud in space traveling at warp speed and decide to scan it on their way to a neutral world for pointless negotiations. Soon after, an alien energy begins to take over the crew. After it takes over Crusher, it enters the ship's systems and causes various malfunctions. As the crew tries to solve the problem, they initially believe a saboteur is aboard, and that they believe one of the pointless delegates is responsible. But they eventually realize it is an alien presence. Eventually, the life form takes over Picard, and he leads the crew back to the space cloud, where he explains that the space cloud alien comes from the space cloud and was initially dragged away by the Enterprise, surprising no one who watched the episode. The Picard cloud energy alien plans to beam himself into the cloud as a combined life form to explore forever. He freezes the bridge crew with lightning stuff and beams himself away. Then the senior crew rescues him and beams him back onto the ship as just himself, and everything is fine again. Meanwhile, the alien pointless delegates are dicks. That's about the summary of the episode. Did I do a good job, Dylan?
I think that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah. I'm just going to start right now. An interesting production fact, Dylan, as a fellow Star Trek fan. This episode was directed by a guy named Cliff Bole, or Boley, I don't know, B-O-L-E. He also directed episodes like The Best of Both Worlds, which is considered by a lot of people to be the best Next Generation episode, the two-parter where Picard's assimilated.
Oh, yeah.
And he also directed Dark Frontier of Voyager, and an episode of DS9 called Defiant, and along with a bunch of other secondary episodes. So he's an experienced director later on, but it's interesting to see the early work from this first season. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to note that.
Well, it's an interesting thing to note.
My one good, because for anyone who hasn't seen this before, we start with the plot summary just to get it over with, and then we talk about what we like that's good and what we like that's bad, or I guess what we don't like that's bad, and then what we have noted is just weird or silly or odd. So I'll start with my one good of this episode. It's nice to see the Federation actually doing its role of being peacekeepers and diplomats, which we haven't really seen yet. It's just too bad that it was kind of a C plot to the rest of the story.
Yeah.
But it was still good to see. So you go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah. I had two goods. The first one was that, for at least, the first 5 or so minutes, there's a good sense of mystery as to, weird things are happening. What's going on? And then you immediately figure out what's going on, and the rest of the episode is kind of pointless.
It's so predictable, isn't it?
Yeah, it was sort of like, I know where this is going. The episode title even kind of gives it away.
Because I left out some of the finer details of the plot in that summary just so that it didn't take forever. But when the energy presence initially starts invading, it starts with Worf, and then Crusher, she gets it from Worf. It transfers to her, and then she's just the most conspicuous possible alien invader imposter that I've ever seen. Where they're like, what's wrong, Beverly? And she's like, everything is fine. We are fine now.
Yep. Okay, before we jump into the bag, because I feel like that's where we're about to head, the only other thing I wrote down that's good was I thoroughly enjoyed Data being Sherlock.
That was one of my observations, yeah.
Yeah, because basically, while they're trying to solve this mystery or whatever, Picard and Riker somehow correlated to Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
And Data is never... because they start talking about, solving mysteries and being a private eye. And Data asks what a private eye is because he has no idea yet. And so they reference Sherlock Holmes, and then Data goes and reads all up on Sherlock Holmes, and then the next scene you see him in, he's got the corn pipe, and he's basically doing everything like Sherlock Holmes would. And it's just a thoroughly amusing part of the episode that actually meshes well with the plot instead of just being completely secondary like most of the other stuff does.
Yeah, most of the other good Data scenes have been utterly random. They have nothing to do with anything. Like the one where Geordi is talking to Data about shaving while there's a crisis.
Yeah, I think that was in like the episode that was absolute crap. If I remember.
Honor World. Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that, and I put it under the good because it was silly, but I felt like it actually added something to the episode this time rather than just being like, "Hey, look at this."
Yeah.
It's a thing.
Yeah, Data's always the saving grace of the show this early.
Yeah, I think we've noted that in like every episode. it's like, well, everything else about it sucks, but I really like Data still.
And it's hard because I love Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and stuff, but these early episodes are difficult, and I understand why they're the way they are.
Yeah,
they're the product of its time.
Yeah, that's the thing about Star Trek. I think is that like if you can get past like the first couple seasons of like super inconsistent stuff, like, and get to the actual like meat of the show, like it's really, really good. But yeah, Star Trek is very much a hit or miss kind
with Next Generation, it's even more significant now because even in these first few episodes that we've watched, the production values have been all over the place. This episode seemed even worsely is not a word, whatever. It seems even worse produced than the last couple episodes before it. The quality just seems to be all over the place.
Yeah.
The music got way more cheesy this episode and just out of place again.
Yeah, I did kind of notice the music being a little weird. It wasn't quite as out of place as it was in like the first couple episodes, but there was still a couple of like, that's just goofy sounding.
Yeah, and the sound, this might be okay. We should get back to our actual point soon, but I just have to say this. This is something I actually wrote down outside of my main good, bad, silly points. I've started to realize one of the main things that really bothers me about these first season episodes, right? It's, okay, for the majority of the Next Generation era shows, including Next Generation, Voyager, and Deep Space Nine, there are extras everywhere, right? The ship is just full of people going about their business. But these early episodes on the Enterprise, it's deserted. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Like there's a crisis in engineering because their warp drive's not working. In this episode, there is one guy after Wesley leaves. There's one dude alone in engineering on a ship of over 1,000 people.
Yeah.
It feels so wrong. And then when people are in the hallways, there's no one else. There's just no extras.
It is odd. Yeah.
I figured out that that's one of the things that's bothering me, I think, is that it feels way more like they're on a set than on a living ship so far. Because there's nobody there.
Yeah. That is probably partially a product of its time, too.
Yeah. So I decided to get that out of the way.
Yep. All right. On to the bad. Do you mind if I start?
I would love for you to start.
I love that you love for me to start. But anyways, the first thing I wrote down, this is just something that really sort of stuck out to me, is like, why? But when Dr. Crusher gets taken over by the alien energy thing, goes up to the bridge, and acts totally inconspicuous and not at all weird, she goes up to the science console to do whatever, and then the thing leaves her and goes into the ship's circuitry. And the way it did it with Worf, too, is once it left Worf and went into her, Worf had no idea like how he got where he was. And the same thing happens to Dr. Crusher, and you see it on her face for a moment.
I wrote this down too.
For whatever reason, she doesn't say anything to anyone. She's just like, I'm fine. Walks into the terminal, lift goes away, and it's like,
yeah,
you're the friggin' doctor. It's your job to tell people when stuff is going wrong.
Yeah, when she gets possessed by that alien in the beginning, I wrote that down too. Not only does she not say anything, no one else notices, oh, our chief of medicine on this ship has no idea how she got here. That's a little odd. All right, just go on your way, doctor. That's fine.
Yeah, there's a lot of just weird, like, it's so obvious what's actually going on here, but they take forever to actually get to it.
Yeah, as soon as the alien went into the system and they had a malfunction, I was like, okay, the alien got lost and they're going to bring it back to the space cloud and it'll be fine.
Yep.
My bad is very similar to yours. I have a few sillies, I guess, not a lot, but okay. I timed it not even a minute after the meeting. Okay, for people who haven't watched this recently, there's a meeting towards the end of the episode where they realize that the singular alien is invading people and then invading their system. And they're talking about it and they're like, oh, it's not sabotage, it's this alien presence, and it possessed Beverly and it possessed Worf. Oh no, we better be careful. Not a minute later, Picard gets possessed by it. And then Picard gets super loopy and weird because he's possessed by the alien, and people are just like, oh, okay. That's weird.
They're thinking that the captain's going to become dangerous or whatever.
They spend all this time debating, oh, he might be dangerous and all this stuff. It's like, you just talked about how there's an alien invading the minds of your crew. It's just, the tone was all off for me. Yeah,
that kind of leads into my second bad, which I suppose could be combined with my third one, so I'll just sort of do these in one take. But this episode's pacing was all over the freaking place.
Yeah.
Like, I just noticed that, like, it's, like, really slow, and then at times it just suddenly, like, hops forward and just completely just goes into this new direction. It's like, oh, okay, this is really weird. Like how, like you said, how the captain gets possessed, and then suddenly they're back to, like, debating forever, even though they pretty much worked out, what's actually going on here.
They already know. They've already talked about it, but then they pretend like it's somehow a mystery still.
Yep. And then going along with that, like, the B plot with the alien delegates is just completely irrelevant to anything going on. Like, it's not even a good context for why they go through the space cloud or anything. I feel like they could have just stripped out the alien delegation part and left, the alien cloud thing, and that would have made a decent episode.
Yeah.
But because of, like, the weird B plot with these aliens that are obviously trying to hurt each other for some reason.
But they really hate each other, Dylan.
They really hate each other.
You just don't understand episode writing, Dylan.
But they really hate each other, and they're trying to hurt each other, and it's weird because the B plot actually takes up a big chunk of, like, the first 20 minutes, and then you hear, like, nothing of it until, like, the very end again. And then that's the other thing. I guess actually I'm just gonna leave that for now because actually it kind of falls in with my last bad, so I'm just gonna leave that there for now.
I was just gonna say, like I said, I left some stuff out of the basic plot summary, but I'll be more specific now for people who haven't seen it in a while. Yeah, they find that odd cloud when they're traveling to the negotiation point, and so that seems like it should be the B story, is the weird energy life form that comes out of the cloud while they're on their way. And so for the first 20 minutes, you see these lizard people, which are called, I can't remember. The Soleil are the lizard people. They look like Egyptian geckos. And then
to me, they look like
which
giant bipedal cobras.
They're cobra.
That was actually my silly, was just cobra aliens.
I thought the Antikins, the other race, looked really ridiculous because their mouths didn't move at all.
Yeah, they were both like, it was such like an 80s interpretation of aliens. They just looked so fakey and weird.
But they hate each other, and so that's the one good thing I had. Was it was nice to see the Federation being a diplomatic entity. And then after I wrote that down, 20 minutes after that, they're just forgotten, and they're not in the episode at all, except for one point where the Antikins are growling around in the hallway like, "Oh, we're mad. We're real mad," and then they're just gone again.
Yep. There's just like these random side moments where they do something and then Riker
and it's totally inconsequential.
Riker and Tasha have to deal with it, and it's like it's yeah, it's all over the place.
There's no point in these two stories being in the same episode.
There really isn't. And that was like one of my hugest issues with this episode.
Yeah.
But my final bad, I guess, also I guess goes along with but the last 10 minutes of this episode feel completely different than anything that came before it. Because suddenly it's this whole big thing where Picard wants to go out there too because because the alien and him have combined into one or something. Completely inconsistent with anything else that happens in the episode. So yeah, that's the whole reason Picard beams out into the energy cloud is because supposedly he and the alien entity have combined and they both have shared passions of exploring the unknown and discovering things.
That was one thing that was in the plot summary, but we could elaborate on it more. They just suddenly agree and want to go beam out into space.
And then he freezes everyone in place with lightning powers. And then
that was such a hilarious scene because they were all standing perfectly still because it's the late 80s.
And it's like it's obviously it's like super cheap special effects and stuff.
Yeah. And
interesting side production note: whenever the ship shakes in these episodes, in the early episodes, it's all just them like rocking back and forth. It's not until like the 90s when they actually get like a set that can tilt and wobble, so it makes it look more realistic. So in the early episodes, it's like completely obvious that they're just like going, oh.
There's another thing that was in the plot summary, but to describe it more, when the Picard joint cloud entity decides it wants to beam itself into space, like I said, he freezes the bridge crew with lightning stuff. And that scene goes on for like a minute and a half. He spawns the lightning, and then everyone's frozen by the lightning, and they're all like, I can't move! What's going on? And then it cuts to Picard, and Picard is plain-faced, standing still. Then it cuts back to the crew, and they can't move. Then it cuts back to Picard, and then it cuts back to the crew, and then it cuts back to Picard. No one's moving. And then eventually Picard just decides to walk away, and it was just the weirdest paced scene I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's a very, very bizarre, and it has like nothing to really do with anything.
Yeah, like he didn't need to freeze them with super lightning. I don't. Well, this episode has good ideas. It's just executed so badly, I think.
Mm-hmm. But then to wrap up, I guess, our expounding upon the plot summary is that he beams out there, but then the combination of him and the alien thing doesn't work out, so they get him back by allowing him to do exactly what the alien did in the first place and possess the ship's circuitry, and then they recreate his body with the transporter, and then he comes back, but then through basically a Deus Ex Machina, he doesn't remember anything. So they just sort of pretend like it doesn't happen. I'm getting a text.
Yeah.
But anyways, so that happens, and then the one bad thing I was going to mention way earlier that I just thought was just completely silly is after all this, they're talking, and then Tasha runs into the transporter room and says, hey, we found a spot of blood, and one of the Soleil delegates is missing, and the Antikins wanted to boil up Reptile or something, and then they're just like, couldn't this have waited? No, this couldn't have waited because someone just died, most likely.
Yeah, it's
a stupid.
It's horribly written is the main problem. Whoever crafted this script had no idea how to write a main story with a B plot line running with it. And he had his plot line, and then he just shat out a second plot line at random points with no resolution.
Yeah, it's definitely a very strange episode, so...
Yeah. The only other thing I would say, it was with my outside notes where I was talking about how there's just no extras anywhere. There's no damn crew on this ship. And it just looks empty all the time. The other observation I had this early on is nobody uses their communicators in this show so far. They just say, come to the bridge, and people just hear them.
Yeah.
They don't even hit like a communicator on a console or anything. They don't hit their, communicator badge. They just say "Captain to the bridge," and I guess you can make an argument in the 24th century that they would have, the technology to just pick up someone saying a command like that. But I don't understand the point of them having communicators at all. Then.
Yeah, they haven't really established the fact that the things on their
chests even are communicators.
Yeah, they've mentioned communicators, but they haven't really established the fact that those little gold-plated things are yet.
That's true. I mean, maybe they hadn't done it yet.
They reference the communicators and whatnot because that's what they use to track people when they disappear. I guess they did establish it in the second episode because Geordi throws his down and that's why they can't find him. Mm-hmm. But it's not something that's like concretely
but they don't use it.
Yeah. It's weird.
Yeah. The main complaint I have on this episode, like we've talked about, besides the whole the A story that just renders the B story obsolete, on top of the A story being totally boring in the first place, it's just so all over the place in its pacing, like you said. I would have loved to see an entire episode this early in the show that was all about diplomacy, and I wouldn't be as annoyed at this episode if the wasted B story was something else. But the fact that the wasted B story is supposed to be one of the main functions of the Federation, it just feels like it's kind of a shit show.
Yeah, it's just a weirdly paced episode that doesn't really have any purpose existing.
And it wastes the concepts of the, all of the diplomacy and negotiations that they talk about for the first 10 minutes of the episode.
Yeah, basically, to sum up this episode, it's an episode that tries to meld two different plots together, but neither end up working because they're just too at odds with each other. It would have worked much better if one episode had been, diplomacy, aliens thing, and then the next episode had been energy cloud. It would have been paced much better. I mean, it wouldn't have eliminated everything.
And we kind of talked about this too, but I just want to drive it home for anyone who's listening. When the crew members are possessed with Crusher and then Picard later on, it is so damn obvious. They're so bizarre acting and strange, especially for Picard, because a minute before Picard gets possessed, they're talking about how an alien presence has possessed people. And then Picard goes out and he's like, everything is fine. Set a random course backwards. And the fact that no one really cares until a later scene where they're debating, is he dangerous?
Well, I mean,
what
Riker
could possibly be wrong?
Riker does mention it, and everyone is kind of like, yeah, but no one really puts together the fact that it's the alien.
The thing that's already happened to two senior crew members might have happened to the captain? No.
It's just weird, because it feels like they know that it should be that, but they just dance around it. It's
for no believable reason for me. I don't know.
Yep.
The bottom line is it's not a bad episode, but it's not good. It's just there.
Yep. It's one of those episodes, and I'm sure there's going to be many more of them that just exist for the sake of existing.
Yeah, I love Next Generation later on. I love Deep Space Nine. I love the good episodes of Voyager and Enterprise, but this first season is kind of making me a little sad. But I think at least half of the complaints can be taken in that, it's the context of its time, and the way that the show improves is also a product of the improvement that the show created throughout the entire television industry. Because Next Generation was a big catalyst for a lot of change. So I can't fault it too much for its quality at this point. I don't know. I'm just trying to make excuses for hating these episodes that we've watched.
Yeah, they're just bad because of it was part of the time, pretty much.
But there are great first season episodes of the original series that are better than these episodes.
Yeah, I can see it.
But anything else before we call our quits?
Nope, I think that's pretty much it. it's just an episode that's there. It's not good. It's not bad. It's just could have been done better.
Yes. Lonely Among Us, episode 7 of season 1.
Woo!
Hello?
Hello?